Mike Gundy is definitely assembling the best class of all time in Oklahoma State history, but it could get even better. Let's talk about the dudes that we have now and the guys that could be arriving soon to send this class to the top.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by. Today, you can make your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. We're partially brought to you today by FanDuel. Make every moment matter and more. Right now, new customers get $200 back in bonus bets with any $5 winning bet. Get in on the action today. Go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. We have been pretty hot on the recruiting trail. I looked in the other day. We were currently ranked the top 22 class in the country. I think it slipped a little bit today, but it seems to be bouncing between number 22, 26 pretty steadily. There's some news that could be coming to make it even better. But let's talk about the guys that we've brought in thus far that are already equaling potentially the greatest class of all time. Brian Smith, thank you very much for jumping in today. And today we get to talk about a fellow that you are very familiar with down there in the Florida area. But first of all, how we feeling? How we doing, brother?
Doing well. Recruiting commitments across the board in the United States right now. It's every 5 minutes you hit refresh and there's somebody else that's made a pledge.
It is wild. And, you know, in your opinion, what does the numerical association kind of help equal when it comes to the rankings? Like, if you have 25 commits as opposed to 13 commits, how much is that weighed in the overall rankings, essentially? Because I've heard people say, well, we didn't make the top 25 because we only had 11 commits, as opposed to somebody who makes the top 25 because they have 18 commits. Is there some valid, structure in that conversation there?
Absolutely. Part of what they do, and every company is different. On3's strategy on it is like trying to figure out a nuclear sub, but the other ones are a little more straightforward. And for instance, every player has a numerical value and you're just adding. So every player you're going to get higher in the point total. It's a little iffy because you could technically sign 8 players at one position, which means you're not putting a football team on the field, but it's just points. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. But at the same time, the teams that get out to a fast start will be ranked higher. Like Rutgers was in the top 10 here recently. There's no chance on planet Earth that Rutgers is finishing in the top 10. Sorry, Shiano, it's not happening. But, good for them for getting like 20-some commits already. Got like 28 or something crazy. But it's like, let's hold off on saying they're going to end up with the top 5 class or something.
Well, since the last time we'd had this discussion, we've had a lot happen. We've had quite a few guys come in. We've got a couple guys like Michael Turner and CJ Nickson that are considering Oklahoma State very strongly. But let's talk about some of the guys that we most recently have brought in. Of course, the conversation revolving around Adam Schobel is always going to exist. But I wanted to kind of ask you, how familiar are you with DJ Dugar? Because when it comes to running back position, Oklahoma State is not in any shortage of getting into 5-star style living rooms. That is a position, much like wide receiver, that we don't have a lot of issues getting guys in. So where does DJ Dugar kind of fit in your personal opinion?
Watching his film, these are just the notes that I took on DJ. Vision, patience, balance, and one of the most rare possible things you could do. He limits contact in tight space. Like he knows when to dip. He knows when to move left or right. He knows when to use a stiff arm. He has natural, feasible football instincts that he applies. Powerful kid, 200 pounds. Yep. And I think that he's a traditional downhill running back. It's just ironic that he plays in a wing T offense in high school. That I hate it. I hate wing T offense, but I understand.
Yeah.
If you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a quarterback. And he just churns it out. After contact, before contact, making guys miss, all those things, he falls forward. So he's a good football player. He lives down by Austin, Texas. And to be honest with you, his film, he's not a burner, but he just always makes plays. So that kind of fits Oklahoma State overall. Like Ollie Gordon's a little faster, don't get me wrong, but he's the same kind of guy. In between the tackles, he still makes his yards there because he finds a way to make guys miss. And this kid does the same thing.
Yeah, you mentioned it. So part of that wing tee, it is wild, but I think one of the things that has benefited him in that system has been his vision. Because you aren't getting the ball 3-4 yards back in that system. You're getting the ball at the line of scrimmage. So you have to make a split decision on whether there's going to be space or not. And like you said, the way he just casually dips and dives and gets through the hole, I think it's going to transition very, very well to Oklahoma State. He is very comparable running style to Ollie. Ollie's a little faster, but they're both walked in campus 6 foot, 6'1", 205. So there's a lot of comparisons there. All right. We'll shift gears a little bit here on you. So let's bring up the dude that I've been hounding you about. How does somebody out of IMG Academy that's 6'5", 245 pounds, running a 4.640, how does he have offers from Indiana, Michigan State, Pitt, Oklahoma State, and was 0 stars? How does an IMG guy that clearly fits the bill and has the offers, he just got upgraded to 3 stars, but it was like 2 days after committing to Oklahoma State. It's nice that we talked about last time, Oklahoma State getting little bumps that we used to not get, but he's right there in your backyard. I know you're familiar. How does he get kind of underviewed?
They just have a gazillion guys.
Okay.
When I go to an IMG practice, this is not an exaggeration. I'll be on the sidelines. There will be 10 plus college coaches there because just in their senior class, they'll have 20 Power 5 kids.
Yeah.
Literally.
Okay. Makes sense.
So it's just like you can't cover them all. I know all the guys that do the rankings in some capacity. He's a kid that I've never talked to anybody about because we know every guy out on the field is a guy going to go play major college football. And they're so deep at DB, they have more Power 5 guys than they have starting spots.
That's crazy.
Literally. Like they're like 8 deep. So everybody gets lost every now and then. There'll be times that I'm there to see that I'm going to go there into this week for another event, but that they'll have a top 100 kid that I don't even talk to. That's how many guys they have. So it's wild. And I give him credit for going there and competing because their practices, their training, how they go about their daily routine is different than any school in the country. And you're going through things. They have 2 weight rooms that are NFL level, literally. So the kid, I don't care what his ranking is. I know that for him to take that on, he's going to be more ready to go to Oak State than a lot of other kids. I used to work there. I know that program well. It's not going to be a difficult transition. So I care less about his ranking, but it is what it is. Now he's ranked at least, and he's a kid that I think will be a 5 tech or a strong side end and a guy that just plays with a high motor. He's really strong. He's got a good long arm, and he has a lot of power. I don't think he's going to be dipping and just going around guys all the time, but he's going to put his shoulder into you sometimes if he has to and run you over too. He's just a power kid.
His ability to get out to the numbers was pretty impressive to me.
Yeah. He screen game, he'll be involved. Kid backtracks and comes around, he'll be waiting. Whatever it is, he just wants to be around the football. You won't have to teach him on effort. And to be honest with you, when you look at McPherson, you say, well, this is the kind of guy that Oklahoma State's been built on for my entire life anyway. So I don't know why they went after him like they did, but just like 25 years ago, this was the kid they had. It's just ironic they're going to have that kid again now. So that's awesome.
All right, so we'll go back to the state of Texas. Other side of the ball, I gotta holler at Donovan Jones. Now, the biggest thing that sticks out before you check on film is obviously 6 foot, 207 pounds for a corner is not normal. All right, but that's starting to become the new trend in college football. You want 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" corners nowadays, right? Thanks to the Legion of Doom kind of making big safeties, big corners, a big commodity in football. So the size used to be very rare. Now it's more commonplace, but I think this is another notch in Gundy's cap that you're able to get some of these guys that you don't have to build up and add 30 pounds of muscle on anymore. What are your thoughts when you see Donovan?
I think he could play 2 or 3 spots. For his high school team, sometimes he plays away from the line of scrimmage and plays zone, and he does it well. Other times he'll cover a running back, be like at a linebacker spot, be in one-on-one. They move him around. I think he could be their nickel, and I think he could be an outside linebacker. I think he will outgrow corner and end up at one of those spots or possibly strong safety, but he's going to move around. It isn't going to be a guy that this is just what I do. And that's what you have to have in today's defenses because everybody runs 4, especially with the Big 12. with the 4 wide teams and the teams that will come out 22 personnel, 2 tight ends, but both in the slot. They don't even have anybody in the backfield. If you don't have linebackers and safeties that can cover, you get smoked. Okay, it's not pretty. He can adjust to either. And he's played against guys smaller and still covered them. That is a modern football player. It's for Midway. It's a good program in Waco. They've had players forever. This is a kid that's seen some pretty good competition too. I'll guarantee you he'll play special teams right away. That's the lock. He fits that stock because he's very physical, and he's a guy that gets downhill, and they'll use him as a blitzer too. He's not afraid to stick his hat in there.
Well, before we talk about the bell of the ball, because when it comes to updates, the only person that is going to garner more attention than Adam Schobel, the quarterback, is going to be Michael Riles, who was a Texas A&M lean for quite some time. I have a fun story on Michael Riles before we get to that, but we do have to remind the fine folks out here that FanDuel is the bee's knees for everything. If you're into making money, honey, you got to get hooked up with FanDuel. There's a reason why it's the #1 sports book partner in America. You know that we all love sports so much, but as the playoffs start to wind down and we get prepared for the football season, it's not astonishing if you're not making money with FanDuel. We got to hook all the customers up with the boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something in this for everyone, every day, all summer long. Go on, head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make the most out of your summer and start it today with FanDuel. It is the official sports book for Major League Baseball. And you know the odds of starting to matriculate down for the Heisman. When Ollie pops up there, you know we're going to hammer the over. All right. Brian, Michael Riles is the bell of the ball thus far. And my fun story about Michael Riles is I remember posting something, I don't know, a month or so ago. And he jumped on there and he said, "Who is Oklahoma State? Who's ever heard of it?" I was like, "What? Are you joking me?" And you know, he's wearing a bunch of A&M gear. And I was like, "You should know exactly who Oklahoma State is as an A&M person. I'm pretty sure you watched the bowl game." So we got in this little bitty back and forth. And then a month later, he commits to Oklahoma State. I was like, what is happening right now? I absolutely love it. But the talent in and of itself, all right, speaks for itself. Whenever you think of Michael Riles, right, first of all, let's talk about why do you think that he would choose Oklahoma State over A&M, Auburn, Texas, whoever? Why do you think that would be the case?
He's a kid that wants to go outside the box, and more power to him. He's from Memorial. It's in Port Arthur. They have had players forever. Every single year they got a Power 5 kid. That's not going to change. And he's a kid that was recruited by everybody. It's one of those schools that the major programs like UT and LSU are going to go through automatically each spring to check out the new prospects.
Okay.
So
right.
Him committing to Oak State is a surprise. Yeah, but everybody recruits that school. Maybe he just wants to kind of carve his own path. I'm down with that, and I know you are, obviously. So good for him and good for Oak State.
Well, what do you think jumps off the film, in your personal opinion, in regards to Michael Riles? Why is he one of the most coveted guys in the state of Texas nationally?
Length.
Okay.
From talking to people around specific programs that probably most Oak State fans loathe, like Texas, Georgia, Florida State, etc., they just recruit a different kind of profile physically. They just get more guys with length. Like you were talking about corner. Well, this kid fits that at edge, 6'2", 6'3", 225. Like his arms are more than his height, if you know what I mean. Like his length's going to be really good. When he jumps, like there's a couple plays where he hits the ball and stuff, and it's almost like he hits him with his elbow. Like he's just so long. That's the kind of kid you can't teach, man. You need guys that make plays that have zero to do with coaching. Kirby talked about it after they stomped Florida State. He's like, recruiting is the key here. You know what I mean? This is like, this is why we're good. This is why we spend so much time away from family. He's right. Nobody wants to hear it, but it's still about recruiting more than anything else to get you a title. It's no different for Oklahoma State either. You start getting kids like this, especially pass rushers in the league that Oak State's in, are just absolutely invaluable. You can change your trajectory, not just for 1 year, but he's a guy that can lead the league in sacks. He has that kind of twitch, that kind of length, and he has that mentality. Like he is an aggressive young man. You can't win without him. There's no way around it. You can't.
One of the biggest things that stood out when I was watching the film was you kind of want to ride that fine line, or some people do ride that fine line between being cocky and confident. That dude plays that way on the
Yeah.
field. It's like, I don't know if he's overly cocky or if he's just super confident, but he should be confident because I love how violently he plays the game. He's not there to tackle somebody. More often than not, he's trying to slam people on the ground and make a statement. I think it's very, very exciting, especially at that position. Now, my question to you would be, Oklahoma State does have a propensity with somebody like an Ollie Gordon or Colin Oliver. We're going to see it this year as well with Obi Ezegbo. We do have a propensity to kind of morph the defensive end linebacker, kind of the Von Miller style role. We're doing it with freshman Tamarick Johnson, who walked in at 6'3", 205 pounds as well. Now that you're seeing more of this versatility, do you see him as a defensive end, or do you see him as a linebacker, or do you kind of feel like we use him as a tweener like a Colin Oliver?
Well, I mean, a little bit like Donovan Jones, I don't think he'll have a position because on 2nd down and 10, and it's an obvious passing down, they'll just say sick him. But on 1st and 10, he's strong enough, athletic enough, he can hold off an offensive tackle that weighs 70 pounds more than him and play the run. So they might put him in a 3-down or a three-man line sometimes to do different things. It's a stand-up guy. They might put him in 4-3 and play him at a wide 7 technique. They'll move him around and make teams think about what they've got to do to prepare for him. That would be my guess. That's the new thing in football. You're not just a 3-man or a 4-man. You're both. Most teams have a little of that, and he'll learn each. I still think he'll drop into coverage a lot less than he'll go downhill, but he's athletic enough to do it.
Right.
So you can zone fire, do some blitz stuff with that, and that's cool. I'd still rather him chase the quarterback more often than not.
Well, before we get to, I don't know, basically the conversation of next season, is there somebody that you think in the recruiting realm that Oklahoma State maybe should target, or position-wise, that we haven't already as we get ready for next year, dude? Because we've got like 32, 35-ish seniors. So the freshmen that we brought in this previous season, they're going to be pretty instrumental next year, which in my personal opinion also means that some of these true freshmen are going to be kind of asked to do a little bit more as well.
I agree. Here's the key, and you saw this in the portal. I tell this to everybody on every podcast I go on. There is no shortcut here. The number of players at offensive tackle and defensive tackle in the portal that are truly valued at a high level is next to 0. If you miss an offensive tackle or defensive tackle because there's so few, good luck in about 2-3 years. That will come back to roost because the portal, like the kid that went to OU from TCU or whatever, the D tackle, he was one of 2 or 3 guys that were in the portal that were really, really good. He could pretty much lay a check down and say, either you pay this or I don't come.
Yeah.
Most schools can't do that. I mean, Oklahoma's got the Jordan brand and all that stuff. That's one school that did it, but not many can. Any D tackle they can get in particular and an offensive tackle, that's where it's at. Got to have numbers there, and it's impossible to make up that ground very quickly. Those positions take longer physically to develop. So I haven't looked at their D tackle spot. That's where I would start. But Oak State does such a good job with O-line. I worry about it less, but still, it's the big bodies.
What is your philosophy on the number of high school guys as opposed to like the transfer portal guys? Clearly, Mike Gundy is on a mission, much like Dabo Sweeney, to build from within, to try to focus as much as physically possible on the high school classes, which means you've talked off air. That's good for high school football. That's good for college football. Some of what Dion's doing, I don't know that it's great for college football. I know it's not good for high school football.
True.
But whenever you look at Oklahoma State specifically in this next season, do you think that there's going to be an implementation of a lot of freshmen, or do you think that we're going to see another influx of transfers? What is your take on the direction Oklahoma State will likely go next season? Do you think we ride with all these new kids, or do you think we go pretty heavy in the transfer portal after having 30 some odd seniors?
I think you're going to have to hit the portal at least a little bit more,
Roger.
Because you're going to be freshman, sophomore, junior heavy. How many of those teams do well? Non-senior laden teams pick the sport, don't do well. If you're in the Power 4, they really don't do well. Playing, Big 12 schedule is one thing, but you're adding in the opportunity coming off a season. They should be really good this year. Most teams are going to circle Oak State next year anyway.
Correct.
So if you play a lot of freshmen and sophomores, how do you think that's going to go, especially on the road? He may not like it, but if he doesn't take some portal guys this year, he's going to regret it. I'm not saying I like that, but I understand. So long term, I think after that, he'd probably go a little more. He might even take a JUCO kid or two. It's possible. You never know. But experience, man, it matters. Look at BYU. Kids go on missions. Those 23, 24, 25-year-old offensive linemen, that stuff matters, man. They're in cohesive unity. They don't make mistakes. They may not be as athletic as the kid at Oklahoma or Texas or LSU, but they know where they're going and they're massive. That's why they can compete, because they're not getting the same dudes, as Southern Cal is or whatever.
Right.
So experience matters. That's my only concern if he doesn't. But I do like the fact that he develops. Not many programs develop better than Oak State, especially on offense. Like you talk about, always an easy pick because he's there. But if Des Bryant, guys like that were talented, that they refined, ended up being NFL stars, they need to have that a little bit more on defense. And I think the recruiting's picked up so they can do it. Defense is more about recruiting than scheme. It's raw physical gifts. But they're starting to get a few more of those guys. And it's, like you said, Riles is an example of that. But he still needs help. He can't play every rep. You don't want Riles playing 500 snaps as a freshman. That won't go well. So you need some other guys to help.
Well, ever since we brought in Paul Randolph, him on the recruiting trail with Bryan Nardo has been pretty intriguing to watch. I mean, heck, you look at CJ Nickson we weren't even in his top 10 a few months ago, and now we're in his top 2. I do feel like he leans a little bit of OU, but the fact that we've gone from basically number 12 to his number 2 in just a couple months, I think does show people that this new D-line coach that we brought in, Paul Randolph, alongside, the recruiting whisperer like Bryan Nardo, it's going to have Oklahoma State, I think, turning upwards quite a bit. Now, that's going to be the third point. We talked a little bit in regards to what your season does in regards to the metrics it equates to instantly in recruiting. So I want to talk about the success on the field and how it pertains to recruiting, whether it's instantaneous or it takes a little bit of time. That's an interesting conversation for sure. But real quick, I do have to let the fine folks out here know that today you've got to take care of your main your boo thing, which is your rig, your ride or die. Keep your ride or die rig alive. If you have the right passion, drive, and patience, much like eBay Motors, that's going to be the winning formula for you to keep your ride or die rig alive. eBay Motors can change everything you need in your vehicle, whether it be peak performance, superchargers, roof racks, LED lighting kits, speed, power, style, doesn't matter. eBay Motors has you covered. You're going to find exactly what you need. With the eBay Guaranteed Fit, the part is guaranteed to fit your rig every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, the objective here is to have you burning rubber, not cash. With all the prices you want, all the parts you need, it's easy to turn your rig into the MVP today. Keep your ride or die rig alive by going to ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Again, eBay Motors is where you need to be because it is the bee's knees for your ride or die rig today. All right, Brian, let's bring you back in here and let's talk about this correlation between on-field success and recruiting. I have said several times that I get the feeling, right, that if Oklahoma State has a Big 12 title season and has a CFP season, then we should instantaneously benefit from that next year. But when you go back and look at previous classes, sometimes you don't get the boost of a major year until like a year or two later. In your opinion, is Oklahoma State looking at a big year, big class, or do you think it takes a few of these strung together before you start getting the big classes constantly?
Part of that is keeping your staff together. You mentioned Nardo and some of those guys that are just good recruiters. First things first, you got to keep them. Kids will pick a coach over a school every time. I know diehards don't want to hear that, but it's about the coach, not the school. And that's across the board, Georgia or anywhere. Yep. Got to keep your guys. Second, after you get one of these, you should have a pretty good class, and there can be some instant gratification. But if you have 2 really good years in a row in any program, okay, now it's a trend. Then it's different. Those kids like Riles, we're sitting to look at this list. Is that going to happen every year for Oak State? Well, not if you're just like every now and then you're good, but if you stack back-to-back years where you either go to the playoff or make the Big 12 title, that kind of stuff, then it's a different animal. You have more of an opportunity, especially those elite kids that can go to an LSU or whatever. You need to win big to beat the cachet of some of these programs that have more history.
Okay. And you know what? I got another one for you here. I didn't prep you for this, but I wanted to ask you, what is your take on the universities being more integral in the NIL distribution? Do you see the universities having a hand in it? Do you see that changing recruiting a lot, or no?
Well, it depends on what you mean by being like them paying for it. Like the boosters are doing most of that, from my understanding. My question when you say university, like whatever your response, Nike, Adidas, any school, how much of that is eventually going to come from it? Are they going to disclose things? Because I know like Jordan Brand is going out of their way to make sure like Oklahoma and certain schools get, it's just the way it is. They want elite players wearing their stuff. Duh. I would too. How much of it's disclosed probably will never be accurate. It'll be full of fallacy. That's also the way of the world. It's just like politics. Yeah. But that being stated, I think it'll be a state-to-state deal. Here's where NIL gets really hard for the NCAA, and that organization's garbage anyway. No state is like any other. State of Florida has NIL laws for kids to get money in high school. Alabama doesn't. You're not going to get the same law state to state. So it's really crazy how it works. Like the law they got in the state of Missouri now, if you're an in-state kid, you can get paid while you're still in high school if you commit to one of the in-state. We both know there's only one school. It's Missouri. Like it's the only state that's like that. All of a sudden, they're recruiting in states better. It's amazing how that works. Huh. So it's shocking. But at the same time, it could if they center it through, because like if Oak State did it, I'm sure Oklahoma would be in the same par because they're both state institutions. If they had something, hey, if you come here and you're an athlete, male or female, you get an extra somewhere to contact the state of Missouri, you could see a boost for recruiting, and it's possible. But who's the one fitting the bill and what's legal in each state? It'll be different every state. And that's why this is so convoluted.
It is
so annoying. Name anything that tries to go through Congress where all the states agree. Yeah, the answer is 0. You're lucky to get 3 or 4.
Yeah.
So college football is in a really tough spot with that. I don't think there's a fix because nobody agrees on anything.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Well, and the reason I asked is because, right now it's still hush hush. I don't want to know about it type scenario. But you do know there's been coaches all across the country that have been more than willing to give up portions of their own private paychecks just to give to like university NILs. I feel like that's inevitably coming eventually. And the only downside to that is it's going to engulf more of the haves and less of the have-nots, right?
There's about 10 to 12 schools. It's just different. We kind of know who they are.
Right.
I mean, it's not that. It's just, look, I'm not a Texas fan, but I understand. Right. Like their campus and their history, it's not hard. You can be pretty much an idiot to recruit to Texas. And Sarkisian's a good coach. So it's not going to be difficult. They're NIL. They got Ferraris and Lamborghinis out there on their visits. People haven't seen that video.
Yeah.
Literally. So, 16 to 18-year-olds are kind of impressionable. But you have to find a way to make it as equal as possible. Somebody was talking about this recently. It was brilliant. Even if you're an elite program like Texas or Southern Cal or LSU, whatever program you want to use, you have to play consistent competition. I mean, there has to be a league that has some balance. Right now, the Big 12, by the way, is just as wild as ever. It's arguably the most competitive league in the country. Is it the best out of the major 4? It's probably the least, but you don't know who's going to win year to year. Could be K-State, could be Oak State, could be big. It's just wild. Mm-hmm. That's fun, and it's still competitive.
Right.
Even at the SEC, like it is super top heavy, and the drop off after like the first 4 is enormous.
Correct.
And they're just like Georgia's beating teams with their second units in the second half.
Correct. Yeah.
So
by double digits.
Yeah. Like the quarterback's done in the middle of third quarter. So there's no balance. That is the concern. And like, they don't even have to do stuff. Like they got so much NIL and so much booster. It's making it really hard for other schools to compete. So I hope they come up with something to even it up a little bit, but it's really hard.
Well, brother, as always, you've been a breath of fresh air. I greatly appreciate your time. And let the fine folks out here know how they can get a hold of you. And what events do you have coming up? What do we need to pay attention for Mr. Brian Smith in the recruiting landscape, my guy?
This week will be arguably the biggest week of the year for commitments across the country, Oklahoma State or otherwise. Anything you need to follow, you can pretty much follow on social media. For me, it's at FB Scout _Florida, coast to coast, recruiting takes, even a little House of the Dragon take as well. I'm a big fan of that, too. But I love that show. It's a lot of fun right now because all the stuff that we go and do for recruiting year round, it comes to a head, and right now is what it is. And it also starts over again this week. So I go back down to IMG for Future 50, out of the top 100 prospects, 40 or 50 of them in the country will be in one spot, get an interview them, watch them go through testing and stuff. It's a lot of fun.
Too easy. All right, finally, and then you're gone. What are your expectations for Oklahoma State recruiting class this season? I think earlier or Saturday we were ranked number 22 by 247. I think this morning we're like 24, 25. We're hovering in that 21, 26 range. Do you see us ending there? Do you see us gaining more and getting bigger? Do you see us, having it level out and end up in the 30s? What are your thoughts?
Two things. Number one, if they're going to get a top 20 class or even stay right where they're at, they got to do something that it's called win on the field. Got to keep the kids you got, which I think they're going to be good this year. And then you got to get that kid that other people didn't think, like you and I were just talking about. Nobody thought they were getting Riles.
Right, correct.
You're going to keep him and add on to it? Or are you going to do that with a 6-6 season or an 11-1 season? You know what I mean? They need to get somebody else like that. Maybe it's a stud receiver, whatever. They need to flip somebody from Texas or LSU, somebody that nobody expected. To get in that top 15, you might need two of them. It's just winning. The program and kind of how they do things, these guys have been there forever. I don't think that's going to be very difficult. They got a better staff overall. They got a shot at it. And I think they're a team that's right there for the college football playoff. They got a great chance to win at least 10 games, if not 11. So they should be in, conference championship game. They got a great chance. If they do that, I think it's absolutely a possibility Oak State ends up top 20 class.
Well, what I heard was CJ Nickson needs to come rock the orange and black, and that will do the trick. All right, brother, man. Hey, thank you again for your time. I saw your schedule. You've got a lot of shows to appear on, so you have fun being Captain Busy Pants. I'm gonna have fun going and pretending to be productive.
All right, buddy. Have a good one.
All right, brother. Thank you much, man. I greatly appreciate it. All righty, y'all. That's all we're going to have for this one right here. We will kind of break down some of the film as well at a later episode. But until next time, go catch out the Utah episode. That was a good little back and forth. All righty, y'all. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Hit the like button. And you know what? Hit the dislike button if you don't like the daggone thing, because that's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, subscribe. My podcast and people out there. The bricks, the foundation, the bread, the butter. You know what to do. Hit the stars. Leave the reviews. Later, my taters.